Okay, Tourpreneurs, welcome to yet another podcast on the Tourpreneur series. It's just me on my own, Peter Syme, today with Kelly Tompkins. Kelly Tompkins is the CEO of ReserveX, but we're not going to talk about ReserveX at the moment. We're going to talk about the industry. Now, Kelly, I know, has been around since Jesus was a baby. He's been around probably as long as I have, because I can remember seeing his name popping up in the 1990s, early 2000s, on various pieces of technology. I can't remember the names of them all, Kelly, but I'm sure you were involved for ages in my world in the Adventure Link process, and there was Leisure Link before that, and there was something before that I can't remember what it was, but I'll hand over to you. Give us a background on how long you've been about the industry and all the technology you've been involved with.
Great. Yeah, it's great to be with you, Peter, and thanks for the opportunity to chat with you today. My background is as an entrepreneur in developing online travel. I got my start in the mid 90s with a product for Sabre called Sabre Web Reservations, and then actually worked for a tour operator in Australia for a while that was developing a tour booking application with Expedia, and then moved to Palo Alto and got involved with a company called Get There, and we built what was the first sort of major SaaS-based booking engine for airlines and for corporations that we then took public, and then Sabre acquired the company. And then from there, I just started doing my own companies. I did a company in the early 2000s called LeisureLink, which was one of the very first systems for booking vacation rentals through the GDS and OTAs. And then my personal passion has been adventure travel. I'm a cyclist and have always thought that if I could get people out on bikes and experiencing the world in a different way, that it would change how travel is experienced. And so from there, I started AdventureLink, and we were working with STA Travel as part of a joint venture to really provide people the ability to book multi-day tours online through STA's websites around the world. And then the pandemic hit, and unfortunately STA failed. And so I've restarted things as ReserveX. We've been at it for a year now. And post-pandemic, things are great. People have more and more interest in this category of experiential travel and multi-day tours.
So you've been about a while, just like myself. So industry evolution, what have you seen since the 90s to today? Not so much about the technology at this point, but more about the industry, big picture view over the industry and how the experience industry has developed since the 90s until today.
Well, if you look at online travel agencies in general, I mean, these companies are massive. You know, I was looking up Booking.com, it's worth $163 billion. Has been this fundamental shift of people going online to book travel, to search and find, mainstream type travel experiences. And then within the multi-day category in the sector, it's been a little bit slow to get the same sort of traction online, but it's coming. And, particularly with Gen Z and millennial type travelers, more and more people, and baby boomers and seniors, more and more people are looking for these types of experiences, and it's growing.
So everyone likes a trend, and we're at that time of year, January, where everybody's sticking out 2025 trends and blah, blah. So what trends, again, have you seen over the years? Thinking about the customers, thinking about the operators, is there trends with the operators? Is there trends with the customers that you've seen change over the years?
I think the biggest trend we see is a shift towards smaller group experiences. Instead of the big bus coach tours of 40 plus people, it's shifted more towards 12 people, more personalization, more of an intimate experience with a smaller group. So small group experiences, to me, has been a really interesting fundamental shift in the tour operator business model for multi-day tours.
And you've seen that across all sectors, or is there any sector in specific that's going smaller, or is it across the industry, adventure, normal leisure tours?
Particularly for the more traditional tour operators. I mean, the adventure tour operators has always been about the small group experience. But these larger tour operators, the traditional operators like Trafalgar, Colette Tours, Globus, these bigger tour operators have sort of shifted in this direction to seize the market opportunity around small group experiences.
none of us exist without customers. The customer at the end of the day is king. They pay the bills. What have you seen the changes in customers, not just behaviour, but their expectations? I mean, you've got grey hair and you're a bit bald like me as well. And whereas a lot of customers these days are a lot younger than us, and they're different. The customers are different. They have different expectations. Their behaviour's different. They've been educated in different ways. They've been brought up in a digital environment. They've not known anything different from a digital environment. So what are you seeing the difference in the customer behaviours?
Well, specific to multi-day tours, they expect to be able to book online, and not only book online, but book on their mobile device. We saw an astonishing number of people, younger Gen Z millennial travelers on STA that booked with mobile devices and had a very high repeat booking rate as well. What tended to happen was that when people went on these trips, they went on another one just because of the value, the sort of guaranteed value that these tour operators have perfected these experiences over time, and the value for money equation there is really strong. So once they've gone on one, they tend to go on more and more.
So that raises a couple of questions. What was the average purchase price on an STA trip that was being booked online?
It was a little bit more of the budget type oriented trip. So it was around $1,600 to $1,800 US.
Yeah.
Was the average booking amount. And it was usually individuals booking. And it was that shared experience of being within a group that they found one of the most attractive elements of going on these group experiences.
So for the tour operators listening into this, you hear myself and the others go on about this all the time. Lifetime value. Kelly just said there that the customers were booking online multi-day, even at reasonably high price points, but more importantly, they were booking again. So suddenly you have a customer who's not an $1,800 customer. The customer is a $3,600 customer because they're booked twice. Lifetime value of a customer. Expectations shifting to be able to do it on a mobile device and straightforward and simple. Now, I sort of come at that they're doing it on a mobile device because they don't know anything different. That's all they've had access to since they were growing up. They were given a mobile device when they were 10 or 12 or 13, and they just do everything on a mobile device.
Yeah,
but if you do the demographics, then within 10 years, it means everybody will be booking that way because us greys will have faded out the market and all the youngsters will be in the market. So one of your favourite subjects, if not your favourite subjects, technology. It's sort of changed in the last 20 years. So the role of technology in the industry, where do you see it? How it's been? What's it changed? Where's it going to?
Yeah, the multi-day tour industry is interesting from a technology perspective. These big tour operators have built their own homegrown systems, for better or for worse. And I think there's been a fundamental realization that they need to be able to support real-time bookings. And this is one of the reasons why the multi-day tour sector has kind of been left out of electronic distribution, is the fact that this is not readily supported compared to vacation rentals or hotels or airlines. And I think that's a fundamental shift that's occurring. That's really quite exciting right now, is that more and more tour operators are supporting this, what we call a two-way booking interface, where we can connect to the tour system, we can decrement the inventory and drive the transaction in real time. We've been working actively with the major tour operators on this, and I think it's a fundamental shift that will allow them to grow distribution.
Talking about distribution, in particular for multi-day distribution, a lot of our members still really struggle with this. It's still pretty old school. It's like literally, and we encourage it because we know it still works. It's literally shaking hands. It's going to trade events. It's going, whether they're online or whether they're offline, it's meeting companies, meeting other companies. They have a need, you have a supply. It's doing events. But it's expensive and it's slow and it takes time. And the reason it's done that way is because there isn't that many distribution opportunities from a pure digital distribution. There's a few in the venture world. There's Tourradar. We know some of the other OTAs, which are big brand OTAs, are going to go into multi-day. We know that's coming. But but it's pretty restricted from a digital multi-day distribution system that can be done sitting in your office in base. And we're still in this world of going to events and shaking hands and setting up all your partners. Do you see that? Do you see that changing? Is there?
Like a good example of that would be ITB in Berlin, where all, the DMCs, the tour operators are all there and negotiating their next year's contracts and using printed brochures and, and this traditional method of distributing their inventory through local regional representatives and things like that, I think is changing. I think the ability for a tour operator to distribute their inventory electronically is a game changer, not only from the perspective of efficiency of reaching new channels, but merchandising their trips, adding promotions, adding last minute opportunities, adding group volume incentives, all the things that, hotels and airlines have been doing in terms of revenue management for years, tour operators can take advantage of. So it's not just electronic distribution. It's fundamentally how tour operators merchandise and sell their inventory to maximize profits. And these concepts are kind of new in a way to tour operators, even though the businesses have been around a long time.
Yeah, we were on a road show recently all through California, and the audience was a mixture of multi-day and day tours. We had about 120 in the audience at different cities. It was just small workshops: Santa Cruz, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Santa Barbara, some other ones. And I asked the same question to them all. It was like, who's got 50 distribution partners? No hands went up. Who's got 40? No hands went up. Who's got 30? No hands went up. Who's got 20? One hand went up. So we've got one operator who had 21 partners, and then for the over 10, there was a couple, and for the over 5, there was a few. But the vast majority, 80 plus operators, had less than 5 distribution partners. Many of them had 1 or 2 distribution partners. Virtually none of them had no distribution partners. There was 1 or 2 who had no distribution partners, but the most seemed to be in that 1, 2, 3 distribution partners. Now, I'm fairly logical. To me, if you want to sell more, you have to have more partners. Obviously, no matter how good you are at direct sales, it's great to be great at direct sales. But if you want to sell significantly more, you've got to have a lot of partners. So there does seem to be a breakage in our system that we've built over the last 20 years, that the tour operators are not scaling up the number of partners that they have for their businesses. Maybe that's because it's been so difficult to do that.
Yeah. And the other interesting thing that kind of dovetails into what you're saying, Peter, is that a lot of the tour operators, like, even if they have electronic distribution, they don't have that real-time booking capability. So the booking can be requested online, but at the end of the day, it has to be fulfilled through a telephone call into their call center. And the tour operators post-pandemic have had a hard time restaffing those call centers to really handle the loads of people interested in their trip. So it's electronic distribution, increasing those number of distribution partners, but also being able to fulfill those bookings in a more efficient way as well. These two things, in my opinion, are kind of coupled together in terms of really streamlining the operations for these tour operators and delivering new customers, new electronic channels, and making it more efficient in terms of how those bookings are processed internally.
And I know from speaking to a lot of the operators who are in the community, a lot of them are small. Over 40% of the community now is multi-day in some shape or form. Not all doing 10, 15, 20-day tours. A lot of them are doing short 3 days because they've come from a day operator background and they've advanced into doing 2 and 3 day, normally incoming multi-day. A lot of them are really scared of putting live availability on multi-day because they don't want to book 2 customers or 4 customers when 6 customers or 8 customers are their break even. And if they've come from day tours, they're comfortable in day tours because they know they can always drill up a few more customers. Or if they run it at break even or slightly loss making, it's not going to hurt the business. But you can't be running multi-day tours at loss making because of the numbers involved. It's much bigger numbers. So I do, from the small tour operator, which is the majority of our members, it's that live booking, it scares them because of the fill rate that they have to have. And I know from working with many of them, a lot of them are working on a fill rate on multi-day of anywhere between 6 and 8 is the break even. Like they're trying to fill 12, but they need 6 or 8 on every trip to make that trip happen, and then the profit comes with the rest of the customers that go on the rest of the trip.
Yeah, I was reading in preparing for this, I was reading about Arrival and their report saying there's about 10,000 operators. The majority are these small operators. And I think they can equally take advantage of electronic distribution. These bookings that we process for our travel agent partners, they're on request. So now those small tour operators are still able to take advantage of electronic distribution. The bookings are coming in. They have the ability now to fulfill that check, make sure that the inventory is available for the lodging, and process those bookings like they normally would do. And electronic distribution is really about achieving scale for these smaller operators that want to grow their business. And I don't see it necessarily as an impediment. I think it's an opportunity for them to grow. It's just a question of putting in place the processes to handle the new inquiries and to be able to fulfill them by negotiating larger blocks with their lodging partners.
Yeah, there's always, in multi-day, time is everything. Like you have time to acquire customers, you have a time point where you have to have the trip at a break-even point or not, or it's a cancelled trip. Yeah. So there's a lot of time blocks that can go in the process with it. Coming out of the last crazy few years of COVID, it's become really difficult for small operators because the demand of travel has been so huge. A lot of their lodging partners, their hotel partners or whatever, have been in boom time. Therefore, securing accommodation at the right price to make the trips viable, and then having a cancellation policy in place if they don't make the numbers, that's become really, really difficult. Particularly so 2022, 23. We started in 24 seeing that easing off a little bit in certain destinations. Some destinations it was still a bit crazy. I'm hoping 2025 will be the first year of probably back to what 2019 was, where of normal trade relations, where hotels are not inundated with people prepared to pay way over the rates, which knocks out small. Because a small tour operator offering a hotel 8 to 12 packs twice a year isn't a big customer. And
that is a challenge for sure. Yeah. The large tour operators, they've got economies of scale. Like a company like tour operator like Trafalgar, they're securing inventory 12, 24 months in advance with these blocks, and because they've got the guaranteed volume. So you're identifying a real challenge for the small operators, where they're on request, and this trip is not guaranteed until they make their threshold of the number of people required. I think those processes will continue to be a challenge because there's just so much growth overall in the travel industry and people wanting to book unique experiences. So this is a challenge, no doubt, especially for the smaller tour operators.
Yeah. If you were trying to attract, what would be a star performer of a small operator? How would they need to be set up to take a maximum advantage of all the distribution that you and other people like you have available? How would they need to be set up? What is their technology setup have to be to take advantage of distribution?
Well, the first thing that came to mind is the uniqueness of the experience. I'm a mountain biker, and I went on a mountain biking trip with KE Adventure based in the UK and around Mont Blanc. And they have the relationships with the different local lodging providers, and they're able to, and it's, personal relationships where they're able to secure that inventory. But from a technological perspective, the key thing is for the tour operator, even a small one, to invest in an API that opens up their inventory to external distribution. This capability of supporting that is really critical for growth, I would say, even for small multi-day tour operators.
Yeah, and again, this is a random number. It's not random. It's based on my experience of working with them. 90-odd% of our operators, they're not running their own tech. They're they're on someone else's tech. They're buying a SaaS model, monthly fee, yearly fee. So they don't have their own API. They have an API that is there for them and 500, 2,000, 5,000 other operators that's run on that. Now, the multi-day is much less well served than the day tours in that world. The day tours, you've literally got the choice of well over 100 technology platforms. The multi-day, you've not got that big a choice. But most of the multi-day operators today are not building their own tech or running their own. Some of them are still on old stuff that they've been using since Jesus was a baby again. But the modern ones are on a SaaS system, so they're trusting somebody else to get all the API connections for them, or they go through a channel manager to get the connections that way. But it's a rare operator today that are managing their own. Certainly in our community, if you get an operator who's doing 15, 20, 25 million, who tend to drop out of our community at that point because they're often running, they don't really need us around at that point. But the smaller ones, rarely do you find one that's running their own APIs.
Yeah, and we find a lot of tour operators, they just don't even have online booking capability for their own websites. I mean, there's just a huge opportunity there just to support online booking for tour operators, for multi-day tour operators in general. I think there's a little bit of a laggard from the perspective of really, investing in the technology. And as you say, in day activities, there's lots of vendors out there that are supporting those day activity providers and providing online booking capability. But for multi-day tours, there's solutions out there for very large operators, but for the small operators, there's not really well-established focused solutions for them just yet anyways.
Yep. Which means a lot of these really authentic, different, unique experiences are still buried. They're not getting distributed, so they get found because customers found them, but that tends to be the customer who's really interested in a niche, who's going to go deep because of you're really into mountain biking, so you're going to go deep into that niche. But there's a huge amount of customers that are not that interested, and they're the ones that need the distribution. They're just looking for things to do in a certain destination. They're often destination-driven rather than niche-driven. So that we still have a technology hurdle to get over to help a lot of these small distributors, small operators get really good multi-day distribution.
Yeah. But the customer satisfaction for these small operators is really fantastic. People are really satisfied with the experiences in general that they have. I was in Bhutan a few years ago, and the local operator was just wonderful, part of the National Geographic collection of experiences, and but zero technology, but an amazing experience. And I think that's just a tremendous opportunity to assist those types of passionate travel experience providers, to give them distribution, give them technology that assists in growing their business. I think that there's going to be a lot of activity in that.
Yeah, well, I was on a call before I came on this one with an operator, and she said one of the things was, it is relevant. She wants more distribution. She wants to be on more platforms. But then the negative, she said, of doing that is suddenly she's then lined up with 3 other tours or 4 other tours or 12 other tours that all look often same, and she doesn't want to be about price. She wants to be about value. She feels she's getting that if it's on her own direct channels. People are coming and she gets a chance to explain it all, but she's really nervous about being lined up against 6 or 7 other multi-day trips that all, to the customer, who's often an uneducated customer in the sense of what is value and what's not, she's really nervous about she really wants distribution, but really nervous of distribution in case it erodes the value in her trip, because she knows it becomes more price sensitive the minute she's got distribution.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Electronic distribution opens up opportunities, opens up your tours to new customers globally. And do you compete in that market or not? is your product, or your experience is going to be commoditized from the perspective of, consumer being able to instantly compare and shop like they can for hotels. And I think the reality is that as long as your experience is unique, as long as you're delivering value, you are differentiated in the uniqueness of the itinerary, and the value for money equation, the guides, all of it. The better you run your operator, the less you have to worry about that commoditization type issue.
So let's finish off this part of the podcast with, you've been around, like we said, for a while, embedded in the industry, embedded in the technology side of the industry. What's been the surprising things that you've had over the years about creating technology for this industry?
Well, when I started, it was really, when I got into adventure travel, it was really all about, the sort of, I suppose you'd call the harder adventures. And the surprising thing to me is that it's really about cultural engagement. Like, I've learned a lot from Bruce Quintet, the founder of G Adventures, and the way he's positioned his business is really around cultural engagement. And that aspect of what we do in terms of experiential travel, multi-day tours, I think is the heart of the opportunity. It's where the focus is, at least for our business. And that was a bit of an eye opener to see just, people are interested in adventure, but in actual reality, it's a very small market compared to, cultural type engagement and those types of experiences.
Yeah, I can agree with that. As you know, I spent decades in the adventure industry.
Yeah.
And I was naive enough to think that everyone was interested in adventure. It's just not the case. The hard reality is the market outside adventure is ginormous. Whereas true adventure, I mean, there's the soft adventure, and everybody uses the word adventure. But the proper adventure travel is still a niche. It's a great niche, and it's a fantastic niche, and it's a highly profitable niche for operators that do it well. But compared with the volume of travel or multi-day trips, adventure is still a niche.
Yeah. On the technology side, I'm surprised by how long it's taken, at least the big tour operators, to really adopt technology that gives them distribution, improves their marketing, their revenue management type functions. These are big billion-dollar type operations, and yet the technology has always been a challenge. And I'm surprised by that, and that I think the tour operators, at least the larger ones, have realized that they're really in the experience business and not necessarily a software development business.
Yeah, which, again, I agree with that. They need to be partnering and outsourcing a lot of the stuff they're not really good at. And if you're really good at building experiences and looking after customers, maybe that's what you spend your time on. And I would double down on that. We're going through the very beginnings of a next technology revolution. We've been through the first one. We were around pre-internet. Now we're done the internet thing. Now we're going into the AI one. So in theory, and I'm saying in theory because it may not work this way, you would think certainly the larger tour operators will adapt to this revolution quicker than they adapted to the internet one. Because I'm sure if you ask CEOs and leadership teams of a lot of the bigger travel companies who didn't adapt quickly, if they had something they could do in hindsight, it would be changing quicker. And some people were early movers, but a lot delayed and stayed on legacy systems that didn't work really well with the internet. But we're now in this crazy AI world where everything's changing daily. Never mind, for the last 20 years, things changed by every couple of years or every 5 years or every decade. We had mobile, we had social, we had the internet, first of all. Things changed in big cycles, whereas we seem to be in a world now with things changing in really, really short cycles. And as a travel company who's not a tech company, that's going to be really, really difficult to keep up with unless you have lots of partners that are expert at that stuff to keep you on the right loads, because you've still got to look after your customers, and that's the main thing. And you couldn't keep up really well when things were changing on 5 and 10 year cycles. and we're now in a world where things are changing weekly and monthly. It's going to be hard to keep up.
Yeah, I would really agree with that, Peter. I was just looking at ChatGPT this morning and, typing in Galapagos Island 7-day tour for 2 people in May, and ChatGPT can come up with itineraries and refer you to sites that can book, and that's new. Google Gemini, it can't do it. It says, this is a planning tool only. This is not for booking. But it's only a question of literally weeks, maybe months before, these AI models are able to digest and be able to recommend trips to people, knowing everything about you. That's the key thing, is that for multi-day, these unique types of experiences, like this example of Galapagos Islands, there's this perceived risk from the customer's perspective. And when you go to Google and you start your search and you get a response of 10,000 results, it's overwhelming. But you put that into Gemini, or you put that into ChatGPT, and all of a sudden you're getting recommendations and it's personalized to you. That is a game changer. And if the tour operators are able to support online booking capability, then they're going to be able to take advantage of these LLMs and where all this technology is going. It's very exciting. It's a bigger shift than the original creation of the web, which, in the mid 90s, that, we saw just the incredible opportunity then of building the first online web-based booking systems. Now with AI, this revolution is even bigger, and that revolution of booking online on the web fundamentally rewired the travel industry. And this AI revolution is going to be the same thing. And for specialty travel, for multi-day tours, it is a game changer, no doubt about it.
I do think multi-day operators really need to get their head around this, that if you haven't got online booking, an AI agent, which is not a human, is going to visit your website, and it will be there for 0.0001 second, and it will disappear off your website because it's got another 10,000 websites to visit. And one of the criteria of that AI agent will be able to book on, it wants to book. So if your website's not booking, it will just flash through and disappear. And you've missed the traffic. The other thing that I'm not part of failure of my own, I've not been able to communicate this to the community well enough. In a world of AI agents, you have to be working on, and I've made these numbers up and they're wrong, and I think they're wrong on the small side. You're going to have 10,000 agents to one human visiting your website.
Yeah, it could very well be the case, yeah.
And I reckon it'll be more than 10,000 agents. That's a small, particularly if you're doing flights, hotel, high volume stuff, it'll be more than 10,000 agents to one human. In niche adventure or niche tour stuff, it will be less, but it's still, all websites are going to have more AI agents visiting than humans, because AI agents are just a piece of technology that are working at scale every day, 365 days a year, 24/7, visiting on commands of the person using the AI agent.
Yeah.
But the person doesn't tell them to visit one site. It says, go and visit me all these trips to Italy from this date to that date in this budget. And it goes and visits them, then comes back with the recommendations. And that's a fundamental change from searching that we all did as humans and then got a list to doing. For the last 2 years, I keep using this example. For the last 2 years, most of my travel is business, but I still do some leisure. I have a leisure profile, I have business profile, GPT's built. I don't go to websites anymore until everything is delivered to me, and then I have to go to the website to complete the booking. So if I'm booking a flight, I still end up on a website. I still end up at the hotel, but in months I won't need to. But all of that's done for me. The leisure one is longer than the business one because your business profile is much more factual. If you're traveling for business, it's based around location. It's based around the airport you always fly from, where you're going. There's a lot of factual stuff you can put in business. In leisure, there's a lot bigger parameters. But AI still managed to book me a leisure trip over Christmas for coming June to Mauritius, and it took 10 to 15 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
Now, my normal leisure booking journey, historically, for a family trip, could be 10 days to 15 days. Now, obviously not all day ever, but certainly multiple visits to multiple websites, to multiple different routes and different airlines and different accommodations and different experiences. It was a mess. Lots and lots of websites. Over Christmas, that took 10 to 15 minutes because the AI did everything, narrowed it down to the few that I'd programmed it for. And I still had a choice, but I had a choice of two or three at each of the different, 2 or 3 different flights, 2 or 3 different accommodations, 3 or 4. I put in more parameters for the experiences, so I had 3 or 4 more experiences. So the efficiency, again, you still have to go to the site to finish the booking, but that's nearly done. In fact, it is done. That's already done in the background. It's just not public yet. So we're now going to have AI agents booking these things. And I think that's a shift that the industry's not quite getting, that the consumer will actually trust their AI agent to book. I do believe it will be bigger in business than in leisure because people still want to like check stuff in leisure, if it's your family or if you're going away with your wife or your husband or whoever it is. There's different personas that you'll have, but it is still fundamentally different from a discovery point of view, the customer journey and dreaming, planning, booking. That planning and booking phase, which could be this long, has just gone to this long. Yeah. And if you're not set up correctly as a business, you're going to miss this opportunity. And people who are set up correctly are going to be where the AI agents all go to because they'll go to what can work.
Yeah, I think, yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, it's you're trusting the AI agent. It's doing the work for you. It's freeing up time. I'm the same way. I spend so much time looking at hotel reviews and a destination and trying to figure out which is the right one. And at the end of, sometimes I just give it to my wife and say, you pick. It's onerous. It's consuming. And the agent is you're putting your trust into it, that it's going to be able to know you and provide recommendations that are relevant to you, specific to your trip, whether it's business or leisure travel. Back to the smaller tour operator, if they are able to expose their pricing and reviews, all the things that the AI agent needs to consume, they're going to be able to take advantage of this revolution, and people are going to want that. This example I gave you of Galapagos Island tour, there's tour operators, bigger ones, that data is being consumed into the AI agent. But in my example of the mountain biking trip to Mont Blanc, those trips aren't getting in there. Those smaller operators are not getting into the LLMs. And I think that is just such a critical piece for the smaller operators to invest in this ability to expose your content, your booking capability, your pricing, your reviews to these agents that are going to be hitting your website anyways.
Yep. So let's move on to your current business, ReserveX. Give us a brief on ReserveX, what it is, what it does, who's it for.
So ReserveX is a software as a service platform that enables any travel agency to activate the tour button, experience button on their website. We're unique in providing the ability to book not only multi-day tours, but day activities. And we're also adding cruises, starting with river cruises and specialty cruises. And so we've really pioneered that real-time online booking capability and provide a turnkey solution where a current travel agency may be selling tours, but doing it manually with just brochure content online. Now they can support the ability for both the consumer to book online or the travel agent who is traditionally calling the tour operator to fulfill a booking. So we provide that turnkey solution with the consumer booking and the agent booking components for the travel agency to really activate this part of their business. And so we're just rolling this out now. We've launched it with a couple of travel agencies in Canada, Escapes Travel based in Vancouver, and Maritime Travel, which is one of the largest travel agencies in Canada. And then our next partnerships are in Europe that we'll be announcing soon.
So just clarify that so I've got this clear. Are you purely B2B or is it B2B2C?
There is a B2C component. We have a partnership with Google. We've been working with them for over a year now to expose multi-day tours into Google search through the Things to Do product. That is just coming online now. And so we run a website with Google called My Tours that allows consumers to book directly through a Google search, where they can search on a African safari in Botswana and see a structured result come back of things under the Things to Do category of Google, where they can book those just as they would book a day activity.
Yeah. So your main customer group is the travel agents?
Yeah, travel agencies is our audience. It's really providing a solution similar to TourRadar, but really designed around the travel agency, their preferred tour operators that they want to work with, configuring it so they're the merchant of record for processing credit cards, or the tour operators the merchant of record. Really developing a solution, a very flexible solution in multiple languages, multiple currencies, and all geared to around giving the travel agency a customized solution that allows them to activate this tour category on their website.
So one of the reasons I wanted to speak to you on this was when I've seen you were targeting travel agencies as your main customer. Mm-hmm. Our community members, tour operators, particularly small ones, they find travel agencies really difficult to work with. They find it difficult to track them down. They find it difficult to get partnerships with them. They know they're selling, or they know they want to sell, but tying it all together, they find it quite challenging. And that's why I wanted to get you on to dig deeper into this travel agency part on the benefits for small operators to go through tech to enable them to reach this market that they know exists, and they try hard to connect with it. It's quite easy for tour operators to connect with other tour operators because they all speak the same language, and you have inbound and outbound. Therefore, we have a natural distribution market where people do deals and buy off other tour operators. The minute it's a travel agent, often the language changes, and the way that the business model works also changes. So we know our members really struggle with this travel agent distribution part, although so many of our members are wanting to do business with travel agents, but they end up just working with tour operators rather than travel agents because they're finding it so challenging.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Like if you look at the cruise industry, mind you, there's fewer cruise companies with structured APIs that allow agents to book in real time. I think the stat is about 73% of the distribution is through travel agencies. With tour operators is much lower, in the 30 to 40% range. And it's just you're identifying this key structural issue of how a general agent that books business and leisure travel and has a customer that wants to go to Costa Rica, where do they go? There's really no source for them through the GDS systems or other sources to be able to find that specialty tour and be able to compare it and give recommendations to their client. So it all comes down to the agents that specialize in these types of tours, and it's relationship driven. A travel agent may know of a particular operator because they've met them at a trade show, that sort of thing. But I think there's a real opportunity, but also a challenge in terms of how we can connect the leisure travel agents with the tour operators and do it at scale.
And the travel agency you're targeting, are these the travel agents that are part of the big consortium groups? The branded groups that can have 1,000, 500, 1,000 travel agents all part of the group? Is that who your target customer is? So you do one deal and you end up with 1,000 travel agents?
I think there's a lot of independent travel agents also, but like, for example, with maritime travel, they're part of Virtuoso. Escapes is part of Ensemble. These groups do have access to the negotiated rates of these consortium travel agency groups, and being able to have access to preferred rates and pricing with these tour operators. But they just can't provide a solution. Those companies are not set up to really provide this type of reservation technology. And so I think that's a tremendous opportunity for our company to provide that. But there's a lot of independent agents that were cruise focused and now see the experience market as a growing opportunity and are looking for solutions to be able to book experiences coupled with cruises, tours and cruises. I think there's just a tremendous amount of innovation that's going to happen in this sector over the next few years.
So if I'm a small operator, Tourpreneur member listening to this, how do I reach that market? How do I connect to ReserveX, which then allows me to reach this travel agent market?
Yeah. Well, we have a hosted solution, but the reality is sort of the 80-20 rule. The majority of transactions on our system are through these tour operators with APIs that we're able to connect to. We don't require the tour operator to do any work. We map our system to the tour operator to be able to pull their data into our system. But that API capability is really quite critical. And the reality is, Arrival says there's 10,000 operators. We think it's more like 1,000 relevant operators. Within that group of 1,000 operators, there's about 40 in the world that support a one-way API. The real-time booking capability is supported by less than 5, maybe 8 tour operators in the world. So there's a real need to be able to push this electronic distribution, particularly, Peter, with AI on the verge of sort of providing the planning front end here. Investing in this capability is really critical to grow the experiential multi-day tour segment, in my opinion.
So what's your future vision for ReserveX? What are you trying to do with this? Where's it? You know where you are because you've got there with your first few customers. Where are you trying to take it?
Well, we want to solve the problem for tour operators in terms of how they connect to electronic distribution channels. Solve the problem that allows tour operators to efficiently distribute their inventory electronically to a world of travel agencies around the world, and to really not only open up and allow them to grow their business, but reduce their operational costs of manual fulfillment through telephone calls into their call center.
So last question for you, and it's coming from a dog here that keeps butting in. Buddy's asking the last question. What advice would you give to small, medium-sized, multi-day operators? The top 3 actions, given everything we've discussed, given everything that's happening in the world at the moment with regards to technology, what would be your advice to small, medium-sized, multi-day operators who are proactive and want to grow their business?
Yeah, I mean, I talk about the large operators simply because they have some of the infrastructure, but it's those small operators like the one I mentioned in Bhutan, or the mountain biking KE Adventure Company in Mont Blanc. They offer incredible experiences. So I think number one is, don't get overwhelmed with technology. It's there. There's options for you in terms of finding solutions that can work with your business model. To open up your inventory so people can book it online. Seek out the solutions there. Number 2 is electronic distribution. Your point about people being apprehensive of, well, is this going to commoditize my product? How am I going to differentiate myself if I open up my distribution? How am I going to really be able to take advantage of that without commoditizing your experiences? And I think the reality is that the more unique, the more valuable, the more passionate you are as an operator, you're going to stand out and you're going to differentiate what you are offering in the market. And on the third thing, it all comes down to the fundamental experience. I think that if you're a great operator and you're passionate about what you do as a small operator in your specialty niche, I think that at the end of the day, that's what wins, and people will find you, and even AI will make it even more accessible. Even if you don't have that booking capability, you're still going to be recognized if you're passionate about what you're doing.
So there you go, folks. If you're a multi-day, small, medium-sized operator who's creating unique, fantastic experiences, Kelly reckons you're still going to stand out. However, if you want to stand out more, you're going to have to get your backsides in gear with technology and start to get these APIs hooking up and start to give the market what it wants, because the customers want this stuff live, available, bookable in real time. Thanks very much for your time, Kelly. That's been great speaking to you.
Likewise, Peter. Thank you.